You believe you can recognize a dangerous person? Dot. You think you can feel when someone is toxic, when the air in a room turns heavy, when a behavior crosses a line. But let me tell you something that will change how you see everyone you know. The truly dangerous ones are almost never obvious. The most destructive people in your life are often charming, kind, helpful. Sometimes they share your last name and sit at your table. Dot. And while you stand guard against the obvious villains, you have left a far more dangerous door wide open. The door through which the unconscious of another person quietly enters and begins to live inside your own. I spent my life mapping these hidden dynamics, and what I found is that most of what governs a human being lies far beneath their conscious control. This is not true only of you, it is true of everyone around you, and there, precisely, is where the danger waits. Because when a person is blind to their own darkness, that darkness does not simply rest. It goes looking for a host, and very often that host is you. Don't stop and consider. How many times have you walked away from a conversation feeling emptied, drained, somehow smaller? How many times have you been blamed for something you never did, or cast as the rescuer of a tragedy that was never yours? I gave a name to what is happening in those moments: projection. The unconscious act by which a person hurls onto you the very thing they refuse to see in themselves. And from that instant, you stop being a person to them. You become a symbol, a mirror, an imagined enemy, or an idealized hero. And every one of those images shares a single quality. None of them is actually you. The most frightening part is that you usually do not notice you have entered the game. You believe you are helping, being kind, being mature, and all the while you are sinking into a psychic field that is not yours, trying to solve conflicts that were never yours, ruled by a dynamic you did not create. And understand this clearly. The gravest danger does not come from the deliberate, conscious cruel. It comes from the unintegrated, those who live cut off from their own depths, ruled by masks, by wounds, by complexes they have never faced. They are not evil, they are dangerous. And their danger is silent. It does not break down the front door. It seeps in slowly, day by day, through a small comment, a veiled accusation, a heavy silence, until one morning you no longer trust your own mind. So I am going to show you 6 of them, 6 kinds of people who wound not through deliberate malice, but through forces inside themselves that they do not understand. And I must warn you before we begin, as we walk through these 6, you may meet someone you love. And you may also, if you're honest, meet a part of yourself. Dot, the first, lives by blaming you for everything they feel. Dot, imagine sharing your days with someone who turns your very presence into the cause of their pain, who makes you responsible for emotions you never set in motion. At first, they seem fragile, sensitive, deep. But slowly you realize you have been pulled onto a battlefield that was never yours, and on which you were losing before you ever arrived. Dot. This is the unconscious manipulator. Someone unaware of their own wounds, who flings them onto others as a kind of psychic survival. I once said that what we refuse to confront within ourselves, we will meet out in the world as fate. And often this fate has a name and a face, and shares your home. Dot. This person lives in a state of constant projection. To project is a natural function of the psyche. But when it goes unrecognized, it becomes a kind of blindness, a prison in which the other person is no longer seen as they are, but used as a screen for what is hidden. The unconscious manipulator does not see you at all. They see a lost piece of themselves, and they react to you as though you were it. They position themselves always as the victim. Whatever happens is someone else's fault, never theirs. When they feel anger, you provoked it. When they are sad, you disappointed them. When they feel small, it is because you imagine yourself superior. And the distortion is so subtle that you begin to interrogate yourself. Was I insensitive? Did I say something wrong? Am I the toxic one? And so the manipulation is complete, without a single raised voice, without one direct demand, entirely emotional, entirely unconscious, and utterly effective. What makes the trap close is that these people are often charming. They carry charisma, sensitivity, an aura of deep feeling. And so you believe you can help them, heal them, understand them as no one else has. But what you are truly doing is sacrificing your own psychic health to rescue someone who refuses to descend into themselves. And the harder you pull, the deeper you sink. The only protection is awareness. Recognize the pattern. Cut the invisible threads tying you to this person's emotional story. And above all, ask yourself, again and again, is this feeling mine, or has it been placed in me? Because the unconscious manipulator does not storm your life. They slip in through the open gate of your empathy. If this is reaching something in you, subscribe to this channel. What comes next goes deeper still. The second danger does not come from extreme behavior. It comes from what looks too perfect. The ever-ready smile, the flawless posture, the impeccable image. We live in an age of appearances where seeming has all but replaced being. And this I considered a serious affliction. Because when a person fuses completely with their persona, the social mask we all wear to move through the world, they risk losing every thread of connection to their own essence. I once described the persona as what a person is not, but what he and others believe him to be. An artificial construction shaped by social, family, and professional expectation. The persona itself is no error. We all need one. It lets us be the doctor, the teacher, the brother, the friend. The danger begins when someone believes they are only that, when the mask fuses to the face, and everything spontaneous, vulnerable, and true is locked away in the cellar of the psyche. The bearer of the persona is a master of pleasant surfaces. They say what you want to hear. They behave correctly. They avoid all conflict. But behind the curtain of that control sits a soul in quiet ruin. Because the more faithfully they maintain the image, the more they suffocate the living self underneath. To live beside such a person is strange. You sense something is wrong, but you cannot name it. The interactions lack spontaneity, lack depth, lack truth. Everything feels rehearsed. And worse, they project that same demand for perfection onto you. They expect you to perform, to fit, to keep up the theater. And when you step outside the script with a raw emotion, a doubt, a pain, they withdraw, grow uncomfortable, shut down. Because anything that reminds them of what they have repressed becomes unbearable. I warned that this fusion with the persona is one of the great threats to individuation, the long road of becoming whole. The real danger begins when a person is hypnotized by the role they play. And living near such a person is not merely hollow, it is contagious. Slowly you begin to police your own words, to hide the parts of you that do not fit the ideal, to put on a mask of your own, and you do not even notice it happening. But when a human being represses what they feel and desire for long enough, it does not vanish. It accumulates. It ferments in the dark until it hardens into shadow. And that brings us to a more dangerous figure still. The third is the one who is always controlled, always measured, always correct, moderate, polite. But beneath that smooth surface, a force is building toward release. Because everything they judge to be ugly, wrong, or unacceptable is simply pressed down into the basement of the soul, never faced, never transformed, merely buried. I gave a great part of my life to understanding the shadow. The shadow is everything you refuse to recognize in yourself, and which nonetheless insists on finding its way out. It is not the evil of the world. It is not the enemy out there. It is internal. It is the hatred you will not admit you feel, the envy you explain away, the desire you suppress, the ambition you disguise as humility. Everything you reject in yourself does not disappear. It becomes shadow. And what you do not make conscious will rule your life, and you will call it destiny. The owner of the repressed shadow does not seem dangerous at first. Quite the opposite. They are often admired, disciplined, helpful. But there is something off. They cannot tolerate weakness in others. They recoil from spontaneity. Intense emotion disturbs them. They always seem charged, and they never erupt. Until one day they do. And when it comes, it is devastating. This is a person living in constant emotional vigilance. They do not permit themselves to feel, and so they condemn those who do. They do not permit themselves to err, and so they attack those who do. They grow moralistic, demanding, controlling, and all of it is one long effort to keep the unconscious chained. I always said it plainly. The stronger the mask, the more repressed the shadow. And the more repressed the shadow, the more brutal its eventual return. You will know this pattern by the disproportionate reaction, the explosion over something small, the grudge held for years, the quiet sabotage, the bitter, critical person whom no one can understand, And here is the part most people miss. The shadow is not made only of ugliness. It also holds your denied strength, your buried creativity, your unlived potential. But when it is refused for long enough, all of that turns to poison, and the poison spreads first to whoever stands closest, The fourth carries no sword. He carries rules, dogmas, ready-made phrases. The fourth claims to be moved by ethics, by righteousness, by virtue. And in truth, he is building a cage of guilt and shame, and locking both himself and you inside it. When morality becomes a facade, it turns into one of the most cunning forms of psychic repression there is. This is the moral controller. Rather than integrate his own shadow, he projects it onto the conduct of everyone else, and condemns in them precisely what he cannot accept in himself. You have met him. The one forever pointing at others, never turning the gaze inward, who appoints himself the standard of behavior, not because he truly embodies it, but because he desperately needs to maintain an image of moral height. The deeper the repression, the more violent the need to cast the shadow outward, and so he turns others into sinners and deviants to avoid ever facing his own contradictions. What makes him more toxic than an ordinary manipulator is that he believes he is doing good. He genuinely thinks he is correcting you, saving you, teaching you. His cruelty arrives wrapped in authority and good intention. It is for your own good. You will thank me one day. Someone has to tell you the truth. But this truth is not clean. It is heavy with everything he has refused to see in himself. I wrote at length about the figures of Christ and the Antichrist as symbols of wholeness and of dissociation. The moral controller imagines he embodies the light while remaining utterly blind to his own darkness. He casts evil onto others to preserve the illusion of his own purity. And that blindness makes him dangerous. If you live near such a person, you begin to feel perpetually guilty, always somehow in the wrong, even when you are simply living. And the most perverse part is that you start to swallow the verdict. You begin to repress what is natural and human in yourself, and to fold yourself into an ideal that was never yours. Another person's morality becomes your prison. And where there is excessive moralism, there is always an absence of self-knowledge. The extreme moralist does not want truth. He wants control. And when he cannot govern the world outside, he sets about governing the inner world of everyone near him. The fifth can embrace you in the morning and shatter you by night, without ever understanding why. Imagine living with someone who is sweet and generous one moment, and in the next erupts in fury, or collapses into a wall of silence, or accuses you of something that never crossed your mind. A compliment curdles into a demand. A joke becomes an assault. A gesture of affection is read as a threat. Whatever you do, the ground beneath you is never stable. This is what it is to live beside someone ruled by their complexes. A complex, in my understanding, is an autonomous core of emotion and memory that lives in the unconscious and can seize control of the conscious mind at any moment. They are like fragmented little personalities within us, built out of trauma, out of wounds, out of unfinished experience. And they cause a person to react not to what is happening now, but to the echoes of an old abandonment, an old rejection, an old humiliation. A harmless remark touches the buried wound, and whoever is standing nearby pays the price. The complexed person does not know they are being driven by these forces. When the fury comes, or the crushing sadness, or the wild resentment, they are certain they are being rational. They are not. They are reliving something undigested. And the cruelty of it is that this does not happen all the time. It comes in lapses, explosions broken up by stretches of warmth, affection, and regret, which makes the bond confusing and strangely addictive. You tell yourself, they are not always like this. Sometimes they are wonderful. And that is exactly what keeps you bound, because the moments of true connection are real, and they are followed, without warning, by ruptures you cannot decode. So, hoping to restore the peace, you begin to fold yourself smaller. You avoid certain subjects. You weigh every word. You walk on eggshells, all to keep from waking the thing that sleeps in the other person. But hear the hard truth. That thing was never woken by you. It was always there, latent and hungry, waiting for any trigger at all. The unrecognized complex, I found, ends by colonizing the whole psyche. It speaks for the person. It feels for them. It acts for them. And if you stay close long enough, you begin to absorb its ghosts. You start to doubt your own memory, your own feelings, and without ever noticing, you too begin to be colonized by another person's unconscious. The sixth does not want your presence. They want your energy, and they will do anything to drain it. Not through violence, not through open aggression, but through subtle demands, through a victimhood that never ends, through an emotional dependency disguised as love. This is the most silent draining of all. In my language, it is the symbol of the unresolved symbiotic bond, the pathological tie that strangles psychic growth and dissolves the very borders of the self. I taught that one of the greatest threats to individuation is exactly this kind of relationship, where two people no longer recognize themselves as separate beings, but as extensions of one another. The psychic vampire lives there. They need your constant attention, your daily comfort, your endless availability. But beneath the need is a void that is not yours, and that you will never be able to fill. You begin by offering support, then your time. Then you tolerate emotional abuse in the name of understanding, until one day you realize all your energy has been drained, and you can no longer tell where the other person ends and you begin. The exhaustion is not merely of the body, it is existential, as though the soul itself were being drunk, drop by drop, day after day. There are people who, unable to hold themselves up from within, attach to others and live as emotional parasites. And cruel as that sounds, it is the truth. The psychic vampire does not want to grow, they want to be carried. But the deepest danger is not the exhaustion, it is the dissolution of yourself. You begin to feel guilty for wanting space, selfish for wanting silence, cold for wanting distance. Because the psychic vampire is a master of reversing roles. From victim, they become the accuser. From the needy one, the manipulator. And before you understand what has happened, you are living only to prevent the next crisis, to keep a peace that is quietly killing you. So now you have met all six. And here I must turn the mirror, because this is the part that matters most, and the part everyone wishes to avoid. I offered in all my work a single way out, to make the unconscious conscious. And that path does not apply only to other people, it applies to you. Because perhaps at some point in your life, you have been the psychic vampire, or the complexed one, or the bearer of the persona. None of us is innocent here. We all carry a shadow. We all carry pain. The only difference, the difference that decides everything, lies between the one who finds the courage to look within and the one who chooses to fling that weight onto others. So do not leave here building a list of villains to flee. That would be to miss the whole lesson, and simply to keep projecting in a new costume. The real freedom is not in naming the dangerous people around you. It is in stepping out of the position of the hostage, in withdrawing the projections you yourself cast, in refusing to be a vessel for another's darkness while taking honest responsibility for your own. This is the reclaiming of sovereignty over your own psyche, and it is the first and the most powerful form of freedom there is. So before you go, an act of honesty. Tell me in the comments which of these 6 profiles you have faced in your life, and then, if you are brave, which of them you have recognized in yourself. Because that second answer is where your awakening actually begins. And stay for the next video. It carries you further into this same descent. The more light we bring to the unconscious, the less power it holds over us.